Hello everyone. I am Ritika and I will be your session host for today. I welcome you all to the Pragati Vichar Literature Festival. And for today, our theme is that of rethinking sustainability for planetary welfare. We have two guests with us. We have Poorva Joshipura and we have Rajeev Peshawaria. I'll start by introducing the both of you. I will start by with Poorva. Poorva is the author of Survival at Stake, and it goes how our treatment of animals is key to human existence. And another book called For a Moment of Taste, How What You Eat Impacts Animals, the Planet, and Your Health, both published by HarperCollins. She is the Senior Vice President of PETA Foundation UK. She is the former Chief Executive Officer of PETA India and the former Director of PETA UK. She is also an advisor to Animal Rahat, an organization that aims to help some of the most neglected animals in the world, and to the Petra Veterinary Clinic, which does similar work in Jordan. Moving on to Rajeev. Rajeev is the CEO of Stewardship Asia Center in Singapore and founder president of the Leadership Energy Consulting Company in Seattle, author of the Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller Open Source Leadership, Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, co-author of Be the Change, and a regular contributor to Forbes. He constantly challenges conventional wisdom on leadership, management, stewardship, sustainability, and corporate governance. And his latest book, Sustainable Sustainability, questions the effectiveness of ESG and other sustainability frameworks and offers steward leadership as a strong new alternative to address existential challenges such as climate change and socioeconomic inequality. I welcome the both of you. It is so good to have you here. And with that, I will begin asking my questions for the both of you. My first question for you is that what actually inspired you to delve into the realm of sustainability, whether be it animals or be it corporate sustainability, and how has the motivation evolved over the course of your careers? Let's start with Raji. Go for it.
Okay, so when it comes to sustainability, just want to put something on record that, I look at sustainability in two ways: environmental sustainability and social sustainability. And you asked, how did I get interested? Well, it goes back to the 1980s when I first went to Europe to do my master's degree. And I found that back home, the poor were left to fend for themselves for food, clothing, and shelter. The rich were getting richer, the poor were getting poorer. Whereas in Europe, I found, wow, that the gap between the rich and poor doesn't seem to be so stark. And everybody gets basic things like medical, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. So started to wonder, when will we in India do these things? Well, that was back in the 80s. Things are a lot better now, but that's when it all started for me. In terms of environmental sustainability, I think the pivoting point for me was when I saw back then Al Gore's picture, the movie, The Inconvenient Truth. And that kind of really got me thinking.
That's wonderful to know, Raji. What about you, Poorva?
My interest in the environment, or the impact I'm having on the environment, really started with my concern for animals. Now researchers at the University of Oxford tell us that cutting out meat and dairy products can reduce an individual's carbon footprint from food by up to 73%. But it was really me thinking about the planet through me thinking about animals that led me to understand that what's good for animals is also good for my health and also the health of the planet. So I've always loved animals, but my actions didn't always match up to that feeling. So I used to eat animals and wear animals, buy animal tested products and so on, because most of us are socialized to believe that these and other oppressions of animals are normal. So it really took a comment from a friend from school for me to reconsider my views, because when we were teenagers, we were eating lunch in a mall food court, and she ordered something vegetarian and I ordered a chicken burger from McDonald's. And I still ate the burger that day, but what she said struck me. She reminded me that I'm eating an animal. And this led me down a journey of reading and discovery. And when I learned what we do to animals, you know, how we deprive them of everything that is natural and important to them, ultimately taking their lives, I thought, normal or not, what we do is wrong. So I became vegetarian 31 years ago and vegan nearly 25 years ago, and started learning about how these choices are helping me in other ways and helping everyone in other ways through that journey.
That's wonderful to hear, Poorva. Actually, I happen to be in my middle 20s, and this journey, very similar journey started for me like 6, 7 years ago, where I used to be a meat eater and then then turn to vegetarianism and then eventually veganism. So it's very good to hear. Like, I would love to hear more from you and Rajeev,
a fellow vegan. That's amazing.
Yeah. All right, so with that, I do come to my next question for you. And that is, you both have sort of stepped into this realm of sustainability. But what other emerging trends do you foresee in the global sustainability landscape? And how can individuals stay ahead of these trends to contribute meaningfully? Anyone can take it up.
You want to go first, Poorva?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Well, my answer kind of is sort of an elaboration, I guess, of my last answer. So apart from addressing the climate catastrophe, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is how we're going to feed an exponentially growing human population. So EAT, or EAT, it's a science-based global platform on food system transformation, and the EAT Lancet Commission on this subject. They brought together dozens of scientists from around the world to examine this question. Can we feed a future population of 10 billion with a healthy diet within our planetary boundaries? And they concluded the answer is yes, but to do so, we have to transform our eating habits. And one of the things they put forward in their report is a shift to plant-based foods. So like fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and so on. And that's because animal-derived foods are a lot more resource intensive to produce than plant foods. So for instance, while over 2 billion people live in water-stressed countries and 828 million suffer hunger daily, 1/3 of all of our freshwater resources and 1/3 of all global cropland is used for meat, egg, and dairy production. And today, systems linked to animal agriculture, that is the rearing of animals and the growing of crops to feed them, occupy nearly half of the global surface area. That's areas, once covered by trees, which are incredible carbon stores. And so, yes, a big challenge, as I suppose, getting people to recognize this, and not just about food, about other things too. For instance, leather is the most polluting material in fashion. So recognizing these things, recognizing the impact that it does have on planetary welfare and our own welfare, and bringing about changes, some of them which are very simple, such as changing our use of these products to bring about change.
Yeah, that is correct. So thank you so much. What about you, Raj?
So I agree. I agree with Poorva 100%. I think as I look at it, the three biggest challenges, existential challenges that we face today are climate change, socioeconomic inequality, and what I call cyber vulnerability, right, with the misuse of technology, etc. And these three are highly interconnected. And one of the challenges is that people don't understand the interconnection of the three. So, we talk a lot about ESG. Now, E, or environmental solutions, can cause social issues in some developing countries, for example. So just because something works in one country or in the developed world, does it also work in the developing world? We don't seem to really pay enough attention to the interconnections of E and S. and we sort of lecture and propagate what we think is right for one place. So I think that's one challenge. The other is, the lack of overall awareness, as Poorva was mentioning. I think the most important thing we can do is to get ourselves educated. I was horrified just the other day. I read that in a recent UNICEF poll, 50% of young people around the world could not define what climate change is. And the question was so simple. They were given two choices and choose the right definition. Let me tell you what they were. Seasonal changes in weather that occur every year was choice one. Now, we are asking you to choose the right definition of climate change, okay? So choice A is seasonal changes in weather that occur every year. Choice B, more extreme weather events and a rise in average world temperatures resulting from human activity. Now, tell me, how hard is it to understand between these two? But 50% of young people chose A. I thought that young people were really concerned about climate change because it's their future, it's your future that is at stake here. And yet, that's the low level of awareness. So I think really what we can do as individuals is educate ourselves to begin with.
Absolutely.
Absolutely correct. So building upon that, how do you think literature and the books that we all choose to write is a step in that direction, in the step, how does it impact people around us in terms of, let's say climate change, in terms of sustainability, in both, let's say animal practices and leadership development?
I think education is the most important thing and needs to become more engaging and needs to become more inspirational. So gamification of education might help. I think governments need to step up to create special education programs. Schools and colleges need to step up on this, and they are, but not enough. I think some countries are doing a better job of creating funding and opportunities to educate sort of the have-nots or the underprivileged, and we really need to step that up. So literature and education really plays a huge part. But education in its current form could be needs a revolution, literally.
That is correct. Poorva, what about you?
I have to agree 100% with Rajeev. In fact, one of the things I talk about at the end of my book is about humane education. And there are people having conversations about this. Like, for instance, what if the subjects that we teach in school right now, what if we teach them in a real world and problem solving kind of way? So what if we actually talk to the students about what the climate catastrophe is, or what's happening, in the world of human rights? And what if we teach them math and science and reading and writing and so on through exercises in solving these problems, instead of simply teaching them just those subjects without any value add, to it? And so I hope that education moves in that direction. The organization I work for, PETA, we do have free programs for humane education in terms of animal protection, which also encourages children to be kind to each other, kind to the environment. But there's more that we can do about this also in other subjects. And again, also, as Rajeev said, the first step in all of this is education, not just in school, but many of us are out of school, so all of us. And that's the entire reason why I wrote my book, because I thought that other formats, say a documentary and so on, it doesn't allow you necessarily to get as in depth into the subject. And so that's why I wrote this book, to take readers through what our treatment of animals has to do with the key crises affecting us today, like pandemics and epidemics, the climate catastrophe, pollution, antibiotic resistance, and other public health issues, even violent crimes against animals. And, I hope it will influence the decisions of policymakers and corporate leaders, but the book is really for individuals, and the final chapter is dedicated to ideas on what individuals can do to help animals. And thereby helping ourselves. And the simplest and most important action of which I recommend is treating animals as we would like to be treated.
That is very good to hear. So with that, I come to our next question. So the question is, what do you perceive as the most significant challenges hindering the widespread adoption of sustainable practices? And, how, let's say, individuals at our level and also politicians and leaders, what can they do to overcome these obstacles? Uh, would you also like to share some, examples in which you came across these hindrances and what were your suggestions about the same? Rajeev, let's take it.
Okay, so in Sustainable Sustainability, the book that we're talking about today, along with Poorva's, we looked at this exact question that you're just asking. And the whole book is about that one question. And I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can. So, the world is, actually, let me back up. So, I often say at panel discussions or at speeches that, the good news is that everybody's talking about sustainability these days. The bad news is that everybody is talking about sustainability these days, right? So what's going on? You've got trillions of dollars in ESG funds, right? There is huge amounts of regulation in just about every country when it comes to sustainability, measurement, reporting requirements, compliance, etc. And there's huge amount of incentives in terms of cheaper capital, green finance, and tax incentives to go green. So you've got regulation, you've got incentives, you've got cheaper capital, compliance. Yet why are we not making any progress on the 1.5-degree goal? Why are we not making any progress on biodiversity and animal welfare, for example? Why aren't we making any progress on cyber vulnerability or socioeconomic inequality? The whole world is focused on this. And the reason is because we are using tools that are outdated. We are using tools, we criticize shareholder-centric capitalism, that, capitalism is bad, it's not all about profit, blah, blah, blah. We need a more humane system like stakeholder capitalism and all that. But the tools we are using to drive responsible behavior are the same tools that got shareholder-centric capitalism where it is. Incentives, regulation, measurement, reward and punishment. That's exactly how capitalism works. You leave people alone to make a profit, have some regulation, then you measure their behavior and their performance and you reward them or you punish them. Now, what are we trying to do to drive responsible behavior towards sustainability? We are saying incentivize people through cheaper capital, et cetera, regulate, measure against both the regulation and the incentive, how they've performed, and then reward or punish. Now, the same system that brought us here is going to get us there. That's the problem. So what's the missing link? The missing link is that we looked at companies that are really, really doing well by people and planet around the world. And I'm happy to give you some examples later. And we looked at them in 25 countries. So we asked the question, why are these people, through their business, having the kind of positive impact on society and environment? Why are they doing it? How are they doing it? And we found two things. One, they don't do it because of regulation, incentives, or any of those things that I talked about, right? Which is what the world is focusing. They do it because they want to. They do it because of a very different leadership intent. And we codified what they do and why they do into something called the steward leadership model. They see themselves as stewards of planet Earth and humanity and take it upon themselves that I must do something about my home, my planet, and the society through my business. I'm not against profit. I will make money, but I will make money by solving the very existential challenges that are facing us today. You see, so for example, coming back to Poorva's subject, okay, if you look at animal abuse, right? Now, the alternatives to that give rise to huge business opportunities and innovation. So that's just one example, and I could go on with many, and I can actually give you company examples, but let me stop here right now.
All right, thank you so much, Rajeev. That was truly a good answer to hear. What about Poorva?
I mean, just going on what Rajeev was saying, I've actually written a few pieces in various publications about exactly that, how the increase in desire, the global desire to do better for animals, to do better for the planet, is a business opportunity, especially for India, where the plants that are grown in abundance in India are often used to make the vegan meats or the eggs or the vegan milk-like products. Increasingly, the leather is being made from plants. In fact, the India's Central Leather Research Institute just made leather out of mangoes. And so if India starts to recognize the opportunity it has here, there is a lot of money to be made. Also going a little off of what Rajeev was saying, one of the challenges that I also talk about in my book is I warn against humane washing and greenwashing. And that is when companies pretty much pretend to do something for animals or pretend to do something for the environment by actually doing very little. And I talk about some of the ways that we can recognize that and the importance of recognizing that and calling out these companies and holding them account to actually doing something meaningful to address these challenges. Another major challenge to overcome is the active efforts of industries to try to confuse and mislead the public. For instance, COP28, the meat, egg, and dairy industry turned out in record numbers at this global climate conference to do just that, to confuse and mislead. And as I mentioned, I work for PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and a big focus of ours is on cruelty investigations. We focus on this because we often go undercover to show the public what the industries want to hide. We go to factory farms and slaughterhouses, leather tanneries, laboratories, circuses, dogfights. And social media allows us to share these findings with the public in a way that mainstream media once did not, in an unedited form. And in the end, I hope the truth will prevail.
Thank you so much.
It's interesting you mentioned the humane washers and the green washers, right? So what we've done at our end at Stewardship Asia Center, and I have this all laid out in the book as well, is we see a spectrum of corporate behavior when it comes to sustainability. So on the one hand, you have the green washers, the humane washers, the purpose washers, because purpose has suddenly become a holy word, right? Which, more about that later if you're interested. So you have the green washers, then you have the in denial. So what climate change? What socioeconomic inequality? Then you have the box checkers, right? Who will do just exactly what the law says and no more. Mm-hmm. Then you have the window dressers who are it's more form than substance. Everybody's talking about sustainability. Let me do something to look good, but really I don't care about it. Yeah. But I can't afford to not be seen doing anything about it. And then you have the real steward leaders. And the real steward leaders are not doing it, as I said, because of the law. They're not doing it because of any other reason, because they actually want to. Faber-Castell, the German pencil maker, just to give you one example on social sustainability, they started providing employee benefits like health insurance and housing and community churches, etc., a full 50 years before such things became the law in Germany. Mm. Now, why did they do that? They're a for-profit organization. They did it as much for society as they did it for their own good, because the more we do for society, the more our company is going to succeed in the long run. And they've been profitable and healthy for 270 years. Throughout their history, they've had social and environmental sustainability at the core of what they do. Back in the 1980s, when people was refusing, the pencil demand was going down, and it wasn't clear whether pencils will remain in the future in a world that goes totally digital. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars in investing in sustainable forestry in Brazil, so that 20 years later, all the wood that they use for their pencils would be sustainably certified. Now, think of this as a long-term view. We don't know the future of pencil industry. The CEO at that time may not last 20 years, might be gone by then, and yet they took that view. Throughout their history, they've actually put sustainability at the core of business strategy and made it a competitive advantage. So these kinds of steward leaders don't do it for any other reason, but because, and that's the kind of awareness that we need to bring about through education. Tatas in India are another great example of 155 years of focusing on environmental and social sustainability. Again, they did not build a city or a town around a steel plant in rural India because they only wanted to do charity. They did it to attract the best talents, right? Who would come and work in a rural area if there are no schools, no hospitals, and things like that? So it was a win-win-win kind of strategy. And I think that awareness has to happen. And it has to come from within. And that's the number one thing that's lacking here today in all our efforts to educate and inspire the world to do something about sustainability.
Thank you so much, Rajeev. So now that we're talking about intent, I would also like to talk about innovation that comes with it, right? So both technological and conceptual innovations. How do you think it can be harnessed to address pressing sustainability challenges and perhaps create a more sustainable futures? I would like to ask you both if you've actually come across certain innovative approaches that have led to breakthroughs in sustainable practice, let's say in both of your respective fields.
Okay, you first, Poorva.
Okay, well, when it comes to the treatment of animals, there's a long list and endless examples, really, of how technology and innovation is changing their future and ours. So, for instance, today there's countless brands of meat, egg, and dairy-like foods made from plants. There are efforts to produce meat and dairy in a laboratory from cells rather than from whole animals. Science is moving toward non-animal and human-relevant approaches for experimentation and training medical students and so on. And I mean, of course, I mean, where a poor bull once was used, we now increasingly use tractors. So interestingly, PETA entities around the world are currently running a contest awarding prizes of between $1,000 to $10,000 US to students who come up with a game-changing idea for an invention that the student can develop into a specific action plan or design to help animals or to replace animal use.
That's wonderful to hear, Poorva. What about you, Raj?
So I'll give you an example each of environmental and social, right? Innovation. So recently, and Poorva, you're going to like this. Recently, I made a trip to Sumatra, right in the middle of the rainforest in Sumatra, and you had to go there by a certain time. You can only land there by helicopter. There's no airstrips there. There's no infrastructure there other than jungle, right? And there's this company. It's called April. Which is a pulp and paper producer, one of the largest in the world in Indonesia, but largest in the world, but Indonesian company. And of course, being in the oil palm business, they've been accused of, misuse of land, labor practices, and then all the pollutants that come with oil palm, etc. And, the Forestry Stewardship Council actually sort of dismembered them because of their past. Now, the 34-year-old next generation leader of this huge conglomerate basically said, no, I'm going to right the wrongs of the past. And one of the things you need with the stewards to get recertified by the Forestry Stewardship Council is to publicly in writing admit that you did wrong and that you're going to submit a plan as to how you're going to do right. So he actually gave it in writing. Yes, we did wrong. We apologize. And this is what we're going to do. So this is amazing. Now, where's the innovation in all of this? So they have these plantations, right, where they plant these trees with which they produce the pulp and paper, right? Now, they have been, like everybody else, they are being given concessions, tracts of land where they can do plantations to produce this, right? Instead of using all of it, they use only a portion of the land, and the rest of that they conserve as natural forest. The innovation comes from the inner ring. Inner circle is natural forest. Around it, they build a ring of the plantation. So the plantations around the actual forest protects the forest and the species in it. The income they get from the plantations, actually they help to reforest the natural forest and to rehabilitate and to prevent endangered animals and species from going extinct. So both support each other. The natural forest supports the plantations because you need forest-like conditions there. And the plantations support the forest for both recreating the flora and fauna that is being lost and also working on on animals extinction, preventing animal extinction. Absolutely amazing story of innovation. Not only that, and they've actually created these carbon sequestration towers all through the forest. So what they're doing is not only are they preserving flora and fauna and animal species, they're also actually creating a profitable opportunity for them for carbon trading, because these are forests on peatlands, and they actually sequester a lot of carbon, and they can actually use that for income. So it's a win-win-win situation, where they did the initial investment, and now they're reaping the benefits and will reap the benefits, and society will reap the benefits, animals will reap the benefits, flora and fauna will reap the benefits. So that's just one example, right? Absolutely amazing. And we actually visited there before I wrote the chapter in the book about it. So you can read all about it in the book. In terms of sort of social sustainability, the two examples that quickly come to mind. One is, I'm sure you're both aware of this, the Shakti Ammas in India. Hindustan Lever used a whole lot of rural women, often uneducated, to bring detergent powder to rural villages and sell it and make money off of it, and also promote hygiene and things like that. And so similar example in in Malaysia that we noticed, there's a company called Farm Fresh, dairy milk producers, and they needed to get fresh milk to rural parts of Malaysia and a couple of neighboring countries. They used the same approach. They employed rural women. They first used ultra heat treatment to make milk a little bit longer lasting than fresh milk without adding any chemicals. And then they employed these rural women to stock this milk in their homes without refrigeration. It can last for about 10 days, and dramatically increase their distribution network and provided employment to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. So that's what steward leadership is all about. It's about innovation, innovation, innovation. In the model, we call it creative resilience. Creativity, which is the innovation part, and resilience, which is don't give up. You will fail 8 out of 10 times, but don't give up. So creative resilience is a huge part of steward leadership.
That's great.
You were right. I did like that story. I have been to Indonesia, and I've seen how the plantations out there affect orangutans and the tigers and all the wildlife that live there. And I've also spent some time with the Orang Rimba tribe, which is a tribe out there that also relies on the forest. So that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, you cannot undo the past, but what you can do is you can redo the future.
Yes.
And that's what this organization is doing. And one of the things we do is we recognize the 25 best initiatives of steward leadership. Steward leadership being the genuine desire and persistence to create a collective better future. And so we recognize 25 best initiatives in business across Asia Pacific, and they were one of the honorees for this year, because of really the genuine effort in an industry that is so-called a dirty industry.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds me of something my mother, who's now in her late 50s, she says, she always says that, when you look to nature, it always provides. And it is up to you when you decide to stop. So it's like, so a lot of over the past, we have just taken and taken, and now it's, time to sort of also give back. And so it has to become more of a transactional relationship that, a one-sided of just taking. So that just popped into my head while I was listening to you all. So thank you. Yeah. Okay, so my next question is for you, Rajeev. So the question is that, can you elaborate on maybe specific initiatives or projects that Stewardship Asia Center is currently undertaking, or to promote sustainability in, let's say, the Asian business landscape? How do you see the role of the Stewardship Asia Center in influencing and guiding sustainable leadership practices across different industries?
Okay, so let me start by telling you a little bit about what Stewardship Asia is. We are a not-for-profit think tank established by Temasek, which is the Singapore-based global investor, to promote the idea of stewardship. We think that, as I mentioned earlier, of all the efforts on sustainability, what's missing is the feeling, it's the intent that we see ourselves as stewards of planet Earth and humanity. We are sitting in India. Mahatma Gandhi told us this, back a long time ago, that you have to see yourself as a steward of humanity, a steward of society, and then you will make decisions accordingly. So this idea of not just financial stewardship, but overall stewardship, that's what we promote. So what do we do? How do we do it? Education. We run both executive education and youth education programs on steward leadership, by showing people what is at stake here. Rather than classic PowerPoint and exam type of education, we try to make it as inspirational and as experiential as possible. So we take them to places like the one I just mentioned and get them to see. We get them to try doing a few things and see how they feel. Anyway, so education, executive education, in large and small companies, youth education in schools and colleges on steward leadership. Some of it, when we do it for corporations, we charge money for it. When we do it for the youth and in underprivileged, we do it for free. So that's a big focus. We also run a crowdsourced portal called stewardshipcommons.com. So have a look at it, stewardshipcommons.com. It's like, think of it as a Wikipedia, but for sustainability. Anybody anywhere in the world can write an article, post a video, post an audio, share an innovative idea from anywhere in the world, and anybody anywhere in the world can consume it, and this is totally for free. We've launched it only recently, and it's growing organically right now, but we hope to make it a one-stop shop for people, because what's lacking, I think, is the free flow of information on sustainability. And so if there is a free resource like Wikipedia, which kids in Africa and other places use, all over the world use to do their homework and find information for free, you will be able to find anything and everything on sustainability on stewardshipcommons.com. And we will run it for Evan and I guess. We also do a lot of research and publications, so lots of papers, lots of books. Sustainability involved research in 25 countries, as I mentioned, is our latest publication. So those are the kind of things we do, and I guess we will continue to do them. The key focus is to increase awareness and practice of steward leadership behaviors. I mentioned, last thing I'll say, I mentioned also the initiative where we recognize the 25 best initiatives. So, there are a lot of sustainability rankings and ratings out there, this company versus that company. My score is 820, yours is 720, blah, blah, blah. We think this comparing one company to the other in terms of mathematical ratings is counterproductive. So we have this initiative called SL25, Steward Leadership 25, where we want to hear stories of actual business projects, which are for profit, but are helping society or the environment or both. And we look at it from a steward leadership lens that, did you apply the right values? Did you pursue the right purpose? And did you find a profitable solution to a problem? And then we look at anybody can apply. If you have a story, if you have an actual project, and then an independent international panel of judges chooses 25 stories, which we create into case studies and publish them and recognize them every year. We do this in partnership with INSEAD, with WTW, the consulting firm, and with the Straits Times of Singapore in partnership. And our hope is that these case studies are then available to people, not only to read, but to teach from, etc. And we do all this for free. We don't rank the 25. They're just 25 great stories. The idea is to inspire others with it. So anyway, that's a little window into Stewardship Asia.
That was wonderful to hear, Rajeev. My next question is for Poorva. Poorva, in your experience, how do you navigate and foster, let's say, collaborations with different corporations to ensure that their sustainability practices are aligned with ethical treatment of animals?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Rajeev was earlier saying that there are corporations that increasingly realize that doing good for animals and the planet is good for business. Or simply because they now realize it's the need of the hour and the right thing to do. So PETA works with corporations in a huge number of ways. We meet them. Sometimes we campaign against them to get them to do the right thing. We might stand outside of their shop demonstrating. But increasingly, it's becoming easier. It's becoming easier because consumers themselves are demanding that they want products that are animal-friendly, planet-friendly, healthy, and so on. So, there was a time when, say, for example, in Western countries, fur could be found everywhere. Now it's hardly sold. Similarly, the fashion industry is transitioning away from other animal-derived materials, such as leather, which I mentioned earlier is deemed to be the most environmentally damaging material in fashion. I talked about innovation, where now leather is increasingly being made from plants like mangoes, pineapples, apples, and so on. The state of Meghalaya in India had publicly stated its intention to transition its pineapple industry also into leather production. And we offer certifications to help companies highlight their vegan products, or to proudly boast that they don't test on animals. And well, we work with corporations in ways probably that people may not expect too. For instance, our scientists are part of something called PETA International Science Consortium. And they recently worked with a German institute to create a treatment for diphtheria without using animals. So there's lots and lots of ways that we work with corporations.
That was so good to hear. And with that, we unfortunately do come to an end to our session. It was lovely to hear from the both of you. I definitely know more than I did coming into this session. So thank you for that. And with that, I would like to say goodbye. Thank you so much.